Mike Tomlin took a shot at Andrew Berry, and I think it had some purpose behind it. We'll talk about it coming up on the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast. I'm proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. Mike Tomlin had some interesting comments that caught everyone's attention on Monday about the Browns' recent trade of Joe Flacco. Plus, Kevin Stefanski says he'll continue to call the plays, but don't expect much to change with the offense. And Bill Callahan became the first NFL coach fired on Monday. Could Sunday's Browns-Dolphins matchup decide who's next? We'll talk about all those things and more coming up here on the Locked On Browns podcast. First, though, I want to thank you for being in every day with the Locked On Browns podcast, making us your first listen every single day. Remember, you can find Cleveland Browns content with Locked On Browns every week, Monday through Friday, guaranteed. And this episode is brought to you by our friends at Mazda. Right now, like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward, Mazda Move and Be Moved. I'm going to play this video here for you. This is from the Steelers media group, the Steelers media library, as Mike Tomlin made some interesting comments today about Andrew Berry and the Browns' decision to trade Joe Flacco to the Cincinnati Bengals. This is obviously on the heels of the Steelers beating the Browns on Sunday 23-9. And now, as the Steelers turn the corner, they have a quick turnaround matchup Thursday night with the Cincinnati Bengals. And so these comments are timely, but they're also interesting in what Mike Tomlin says. He doesn't usually use people's names, but he uses Andrew Berry's name here in a pretty assertive way. And I think it's kind of interesting. We'll talk about it here in just a second.
You know, to be honest, it was shocking to me. Andrew Berry must be a lot smarter than me or us because it doesn't make sense to me. To trade a quarterback that you think enough of to make your opening day starter to a division opponent that's hurting in that area. But that's just my personal feelings.
Now, listen, the easy explanation here is that Andrew Berry obviously was looking at this roster. State of things aren't great here in Cleveland. We know that with this group. He was looking at the quarterback situation. Browns, a couple weeks back, obviously made the change to Dylan Gabriel. He's their new starter. Okay. And so in some respects, he's looking and saying, and I talked about it on the podcast, like there was going to be no sense in ever going back to Joe Flacco this season. So this is a guy who probably wasn't going to play. He was really only there for you as like in case, break glass in case of emergency. If you somehow miraculously turn the season around and then Gabriel were to get hurt or something, now you have a guy waiting in the wings who's like a veteran, right? And he was bad those first 4 weeks. So it's not like there was really any evidence that like going back to Joe Flacco was going to save the season at any point or whatever, or anything like that. So from Andrew Berry's perspective, to answer Mike Tomlin's question, like why it doesn't make sense to him, to answer Mike Tomlin's question, it makes sense in that the Browns got a 5th-round pick for a guy that probably wouldn't have gotten you that otherwise. Like no one's really given up 5th-round picks for the corpse of Joe Flacco at this point in his career at 40 years old. So I think that's an easy explanation for why the move was made, as we've talked about already since in the aftermath of the trade itself. But what I thought was interesting from Mike Tomlin's standpoint was how pointed his message was there. The idea that he used Andrew Berry's name, something he doesn't usually do. He doesn't call people out like that. Mike Tomlin is as measured as a coach can be when it comes to the things that he says, bulletin board material, all that type of stuff. And I do wonder if it was intentional that he kind of put the target on Andrew Berry for this one and said what he said. And what I mean by that is, listen, first of all, Mike Tomlin and Kevin Stefanski have talked about that they're friends. They're good friends. And I think a lot of that stems from their time together in Minnesota. They were only there together for a year. I think Mike Tomlin was the defensive coordinator at the time. Kevin Stefanski was like an assistant to the head coach. So very low level stuff for him as he was kind of climbing the ranks. And then obviously a year later, Mike Tomlin gets the Steelers job and he's gone, but they've remained close from everything that they've sort of talked about as to coaching comrades in this sport together. And, you know, that's continued over the years. I also think that the coaching job in the NFL is a bit of a fraternity, and these guys kind of look out for each other. And you just played this Browns team yesterday and saw what Kevin Stefanski had to work with. You saw what this offense looked like with a rookie quarterback. You saw who he's throwing to. You saw how bad the offensive line was. And I think he probably on the heels of that game yesterday is looking and saying, yeah, my guy Kevin Stefanski is kind of getting a raw deal here. And I think he hears, I mean, these guys all say they block this stuff out, but I think there is an understanding that like it's things aren't great right now for Stefanski in Cleveland. The record's not great over the last couple of years. This is teetering. You know, Myles Garrett mentioned being frustrated and what that sort of means for the tensions in the locker room, emotions in the locker room. And when those things start sort of popping up and happening, all bets are off. Like a coach could very well start to be on the hot seat or be on the hot seat already and be trending towards being fired at some point. And so I wonder if I wonder if Mike Tomlin rather said these comments to sort of take some heat off of Stefanski in the aftermath of this last week and sort of put the focus on, hey, this GM that's built this roster that we just beat yesterday hasn't really given my guy Kevin Stefanski much to work with, including trading a veteran quarterback that they thought at the time was the starter when the season began. I don't know. It felt intentional in that way. Tomlin, again, he's as strategic as it comes when he says these things. And if he makes comments like that, of course, everyone's eyebrows are going to be raised because you don't hear Mike Tomlin do that very often. So I thought that was an interesting response. For what it's worth, Kevin, of course, was asked about those comments, didn't want to even give it any sort of legs or any sort of thought. He basically just said, I have no comment on that. Left it at that. Classic Kevin Stefanski answer, of course. I also thought it was funny that Zac Taylor, Bengals head coach, was also asked about this on Monday. And he gave a little bit more than Kevin Stefanski as he sort of laughed and shrugged and said that, he was happy that the trade went down. So obviously, you can see they were on the receiving end of getting Joe Flacco, who played pretty well, by the way, on Sunday in his debut. Completed over 60% of his passes, threw 2 touchdowns, led this great comeback to get within 6 points of the Packers, and then the Packers pulled away in the final 3 minutes. But and then he just added on the Kevin Stefanski line of, other than that, I have no comment, but he got a kick out of it. So this is now the topic du jour around the AFC. We will talk to Andrew Berry in a couple weeks. During the bye week. It's the one time during the season we get a chance to hear from did I say Kevin Stefanski? We'll talk to Andrew Berry during the bye week. It's the one time during the season we get to hear from Andrew Berry when the season's already going on. I'm sure someone will ask him about that, about the comments, what he thought. And of course, people will have questions about the trade itself and why it was the right time and why he sort of was made the move in the first place. So I don't know if this just goes away magically over the next couple of weeks here, because it'll come back up when Andrew Berry responds to it, if Andrew Berry responds to it. But I again, when Mike Tomlin says things like that and he's calling out people by name, I think it's done with a purpose, and I think there's some intention behind it, and that's not for nothing because he doesn't usually talk like that and move like that. But some shots fired, if you will, from Mike Tomlin at the Browns GM. And I think that, it does kind of play into the dynamics between Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry right now and who gets more blame for the current state of things as they continue to just lose football games. We heard from Kevin Stefanski, as I said on Monday. He, on top of giving a no comment to Mike Tomlin's remarks, he also did talk about the state of the offense right now. And he did express some regret about one particular thing on Sunday. At least it felt that way in one of his answers. We'll play it for you. We'll talk about it and why maybe you shouldn't really expect things to get better from here. Coming up next in the Locked On Browns podcast. This episode is brought to you by Mizzen and Main. You know the saying, look good, feel good. The problem is most dress clothes only check one of those boxes. They look sharp, but they feel stiff, hot, and high maintenance. That's where Mizzen and Main comes in. Mizzen and Main takes classic menswear with performance fabrics, so it's effortless to look sharp and comfortable. They actually invented the performance fabric dress shirt over 10 years ago, and they perfected it ever since. Their shirts are stretchy, moisture-wicking, wrinkle-resistant, and machine-washable. No ironing, no dry cleaning. If it's the feel of athletic wear, but the look of professional menswear. Right now, Mizzen and Main is offering our listeners 20% off their first purchase at mizzenandmain.com with promo code LOCKEDONNFL20. That's Mizzen and Main, spelled M-I-Z-Z-E-N, and Main, M-I-A-I-N.com. Promo code LOCKEDONNFL20 for 20% off. And if you'd rather shop in person, you can find Mizzen and Main stores in select states. This episode is also brought to you by our friends at Mazda. And Mazda moves the game forward for those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. In this week's moment that moved the game forward, I'm going to go back to it. It is my guy. I say my guy after I was ready to boot him off the team after he missed that field goal in week 1. But Andre Schmidt has rebounded in a major way. He was 3 for 3 against the Steelers on Sunday, one of the bright spots of the team. He hit a 53-yarder at one point in that 23-9 loss to the Steelers. But the conversations about not having a kicker seem like they were eons ago with the way things have transpired ever since. But it's nice to know that the Browns seem to have found some comfort and some trust in the kicking position, and Andre Schmidt has solidified the job. And so the team, he keeps trying to move the team, keep the team moving forward to victory. Unfortunately, the offense can't support him. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. So as I said, we heard from Kevin Stefanski on Monday, his usual, I call it the post-mortem press conference. If it was a win, it wouldn't really be a post-mortem thing, but it's been a lot of losses this year, so it feels that way. And was able to sort of reflect on Sunday's game against the Steelers, what went wrong, what went right. As you know, Kevin Stefanski keeps things pretty vague, but I did think there were some interesting answers in regards to a couple things. First, he was asked about giving up the play calling, said he's going to continue keeping the play calling. But I thought what he said is like a follow-up to that was interesting. And then he's asked also, and I'm going to play this clip here in just a second. He also said he was asked about the Quinshon Judkins usage on Sunday and the fact that he only got 12 rushes. And he seemed to, at least to me, to express a little bit of regret over not using Quinshon in certain situations. I'll play the video here and we'll react to it on the other side. Kevin talking about the state of the offense and some of the things that went wrong. Let's find it here. Okay, it's coming. So again, Kevin talking about the play calling and how he's going to retain it. And then about Quinshon Judkins' usage, which was I think a problem on Sunday. You saw a guy who is the focal point of the offense. And in key spots, like when they were down near the goal line, non-existent, not part of the play calls. And the fact that he had the same exact snap count as Jerome Ford felt weird to me. Just a lot going on there. And I thought Kevin, again, seemed to, at least in my estimation, express a little bit of regret over maybe not using Quinshon more in certain situations. And I want to get into that here once the video actually uploads, which I thought I had already uploaded. But I digress on that. While we wait, though, I do think as Kevin explores how to fix this thing, and I talked about this after the game on Sunday, like he doesn't have answers for anybody. He gets questions about what's the biggest problem. He gets questions about like how to fix it from here. And it's just, the answer is just, we got to be better. I got to be better. Coaches got to be better. Like those aren't things that just like magically fix themselves. Like I think how things are going right now is just how they kind of are. And it means that you're basically just banking on, as the season progresses, things are going to change and get better, and you're going to try a little harder. And that's not necessarily going to work. Like there's no tangible way to just fix what's wrong with this team right now. You can't just snap your fingers and, oh, hey, it's all going to be better now. Like that's not how this is going to work. They're not going to be able to find guys to fill certain roles on the roster or certain voids on the roster that need to be filled. The offensive line, that continues to be a disaster. Like that's not getting solved anytime soon. And we don't yet know what that situation is going to look like going into the weekend, because Kevin didn't really have an injury update on both Jack Conklin, who's dealing with a concussion, and Cam Robinson, who's dealing with a knee injury. and whether or not they'll be available for this game against the Dolphins. All right, the clip is loaded. So here was what Kevin Stefanski had to say, and then we'll sort of circle back to this.
In search of fixing things or a spark, you were asked about play calling yesterday. Have you made a decision there?
Yeah, I'm going to keep calling plays, but I want to stress that this is we have to get better in so many areas, and that includes coaching. That includes our how we teach our guys, how we put them in different formations, the ways you run the ball, ways you pass the ball, all of the above.
Thanks.
All right, next go to Fred.
Yeah, Kevin, I mean, arguably in the first few games he's played, Quinshon Judkins has been your best threat and passing game as well as, in the running game, obviously. Can you explain why he only touched the ball 12 times, especially none in the passing game?
Yeah, obviously that game, if you look at the fourth quarter, the number of plays that we had in that game, being down 3 scores, precluded us from running, our normal base down offense, Fred. But he's obviously a key part of our offense.
And what about, first and goal on the 3 there late? He didn't touch the ball. I mean, is there any reason for that?
No, we need to be better. Whether we throw it or pass it there in those situations, we have to be better.
I think that last response of no, we need to be better there was an admission in some respects from Kevin that he regretted not maybe using Quinshon more in that space. And if you go back and watch that sequence, he's out there for a little bit because they're sort of running a hurry up down the field, just kind of getting plays off. And so he's already out there. And then they switch it and go to Jerome Ford for some of the later plays. And then they ultimately get stopped and end up kicking a field goal. It was not a good situation. And that's been sort of a question the last couple of weeks is like certain moments in the game. Why isn't Quinshon out there? He has been the face of your offense to a degree. Not to a degree. He has been sort of the face. The one thing you can get going on offense has been Quinshon Judkins. Why isn't he out there more? Why isn't he out there in these key moments of the game? So I felt like that was a little bit of regret from Kevin in terms of the play calling and the way that he sort of handled that. I think that's pretty revelatory in the grand scheme of things. But I also thought his here's where I'm at with this. His answer about just Quinshon in general and even the play calling and keeping the play calling and how this is, we have a lot of areas to improve. We all have to get better, and it's coaching, and it's this. I think that's kind of revealing too, because to me, that he's pointing to some of the issues this team has, penalties, guys not really knowing what their assignments are, who they're blocking, and guys just kind of seeping through and making plays in the backfield and making it impossible to judge Dylan Gabriel's performance because he's constantly under duress all game. Like those types of things, that a lot of that comes down to coaching. And it sounds like he's kind of calling out his own coaching staff there of like, as a group, we have to be better. Not that it's not, I think he is including himself in that, but I think he's kind of telling you like, yeah, there's a lot going wrong right now that is just not getting through to our players. And that starts at the top with the coach. And so that's where I think like week to week, we hear the same responses from Stefanski. And I know it's easy fodder for like, it's all fun and games and we could joke about it, especially when the team's winning. It's easy to joke about it. But I'll tell you, like at this point, it is just mind numbing. Because it's the same thing every week. It's we need to be better. It's we need to clean up the penalties. It's we need to clean up the catching of the football. We need to make sure we're hanging on to those things. We need to get better here. We need to get better there. It's constantly we need to get better, but then nothing ever gets better. And so again, it all comes full circle back to like I understand he's capped to a degree with the talent on this roster, and that's part of the Andrew Berry conversation. It's going to continue to be part of the conversation throughout the rest of the season and how much Kevin Stefanski can really squeeze out of this group with the talent that he has. But I still attest, like, there are good players on this team. There's good players on this team. Offense obviously has its warts, but, like, the defense is phenomenal, and he banks on that defense a lot. But, like, there's still some other talented players on this team that you can tap into. And even Kevin is sort of misusing certain guys or not having the right situations or just things aren't going right. And so it's the fundamental things right now that are largely costing this team, especially on offense. Like everything has to be perfect to move the football. And I don't know any team in football that has a perfect offense. None. Even Patrick Mahomes in his heyday, the best of the years he's had, things aren't always perfect. He doesn't always have the best receiving core. He doesn't always have the best offensive line. They still get to the Super Bowl every year somehow. Like, no offense is perfect, but this offense is historically putridly bad. And I don't know, like I said, there's not a quick fix. It's not getting resolved in the middle of the season. And the fact that each week Kevin goes up to the microphone and says, this has to be better, we have to be better, that's got to be better, but nothing changes, tells you all you need to know. And maybe that's just what they assumed was going to happen when the season started. Maybe they just kind of accepted this year's a wash, everyone's safe, like we've talked about, and it doesn't really matter what happens this year, so let's just kind of try to get through the season. But like, I don't know that that's going to sell to a lot of guys in that locker room who are putting their bodies in the line. And so maybe they framed it in a way that made sense to the guys in the locker room. But right now, like, I understand where Myles Garrett's frustration comes from, because it's the same story, different week. And it's the same message, at least publicly, different week, where it's like, hey, we got to be better. But what's improving? And that's maybe the biggest indictment of all, is he keeps saying they got to be better, but then nothing really gets better. Again, I understand he's capped by a certain degree of the talent that he has. But is there no room for coaching to help guys improve throughout a season? Is there none of that happening? Because if there's not, that's one of the biggest concerns you got to have when you get to the end of the season, if this team has another losing record, to decide whether or not you're bringing back your head coach and even your GM to a degree, who also has put his coach in the situation, as Mike Tomlin, I think, alluded to. So there's a lot going on here. I think Kevin, again, expressed in my mind a little bit of regret and certainly about how he used Quinshon specifically. I think he knows that he doesn't have a lot of the answers right now, but that's part of the problem, is when you're a coach that doesn't have the answers, I don't know that you're long for any job, whether your roster is really good or whether your roster is really bad. But this offense right now, I mean, I tweeted this out on Monday. I did a sort of side-by-side view of the Browns offense this year against the Browns offense in 2017 that we know historically went 0-16 that season. And the 2017 offense was better. This was at season's end, though, of course, not just through the first 6 games. But the 2017 offense was better in points per game, yards per play, net yards per attempt, yards per game. This, by the way, via True Media, these numbers. Rush yards per game, pass yards per game. The 2025 offense is better in third down efficiency. They're at 34.4%. The 2017 offense was 33.8%. The 2025 offense is better in red zone efficiency, 53.3% to 48.7% in 2017. But the 2017 offense is also better in EPA per game at minus 8.47, EPA per play at minus 0.13, slightly above the minus 0.16 that the Browns are averaging EPA per play this year. Both seasons, they had a 1.22 points per drive average or rate. And then the touchdown per drive rate, 14% in 2017, 11.9 touchdown per drive rate this year. And then the 3-and-out percentage this year is lower than it was in 2017. But most of those numbers were better in 2017 than they are right now. That's telling. That's telling. And again, I don't know who has to own that other than the person who's the architect of the offense if it keeps up this way. And if it keeps up this way against this Miami Dolphins team, I think that's going to be a pretty telling matchup coming up this weekend for a number of reasons. I'll explain why coming up on the Locked On Browns podcast. This episode is brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep it from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts fast for a project? Supply House has next-day delivery, which means if you have a project that cannot wait, and listen, I'm a homeowner, so I get how this goes. Things pop up out of nowhere at the most inopportune times. You don't necessarily have the money for it right now. It's the worst timing ever. But listen, you can go get the parts you need fast with that next day delivery. Talk about a game changer. Join the free Trademaster program today to score some serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and dedicated support lines. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHNFL5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. This episode is also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The NFL season well underway, and FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. There's nothing better than following the NFL season with FanDuel. And frankly, the best part is they have options for however you like to bet. Maybe you are a prop bet person and you want to bet on somebody to eclipse a certain benchmark in a game. Let's say Quinshon Judkins over 100 yards next week. Or maybe you want to combine that benchmark with a few other benchmarks or a few other props and even maybe throw in a money line to build a same game parlay. Or just play the money line in real time as the action unfolds and see if you can win some money that way. The options are endless, and it makes every game, whether it's your team playing or not, even more exciting. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. So I think that this Browns-Dolphins game is going to be a pretty revelatory one for a pretty big – and it's going to be a meaningful game because it's going to tell us a lot about the state of the Browns right now. These are two teams headed in very similar directions. 1-5 on the season. Coaches who are either on the hot seat or their hot seat is certainly gaining some steam, at least from the outside looking in. And they have a lot of problems right now in terms of the way that they do certain things. The Dolphins might have the worst defense in football. Browns have the worst offense in football, I think, arguably. And so there's a lot sort of in play here this weekend. I don't know if you heard, but Tua Tagovailoa had some interesting comments after their game on Sunday, where they fell to 1-5 on the season because they lost to the Chargers 29-27, and he basically said that they were having players only meetings, and that players were showing up late to those meetings, and so that is a bad sign when you got your quarterback, face of the franchise, star of the team, supposed to be a leader, going to the podium and talking openly about stuff going on in the locker room and calling out guys via that space and that platform and saying, this isn't happening, this is why we stink, and making it known publicly in that way. That is like a kiss of death for a coach, kiss of death for a team. Like, they are going through some real turmoil down there in Miami. The Browns aren't quite at that stage yet. The Browns are not turning on each other in that way where guys are calling each other out. I think Miles got as close to that as you could get, where he said it's frustrating as hell that they keep losing the same way with the offense not being able to score. That's, I think, his way of sort of taking a shot at the offense for not maybe picking up its slack. But I don't know that he was targeting anybody individually. I think he was just kind of saying in general, the offense has been bad, and he's putting that on the higher ups to sort of fix, including Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry. So they're not quite as dire straits right now as the Miami Dolphins are. But that's why I think this game on Sunday is going to be such a telling and revelatory experience, because here's the thing. This is a game, and I believe the Browns are favored in this game, by the way. I'm going to pull it up right now, actually, via FanDuel to find out, because I didn't check that this morning, and I should have. I'm going to pull it up right now, though, to see. I think the Browns are favored on Sunday at home against the Miami Dolphins, because the Miami Dolphins absolutely stink. Yes, the Browns are 2.5-point favorites at home against the Miami Dolphins. They're not even getting the full 3-point courtesy of being the home team. So I think so they're favored right now via FanDuel. And I do think that they should be favored in this game because they have an amazing defense. They have an elite group. Like, they have an elite part of their roster, which is the defense right now. The Dolphins don't have an elite really anything at this juncture. Like, nothing they do is elite. They don't have a unit that's really good. Like, it's all pretty bad. Their offense is better than their defense, but I mean, we saw they put up 27 points this past weekend. So like they can do some stuff offensively, but can they do it against an elite defense? That's the big question. We'll get more into the X's and O's on it obviously later in the week, but I think the Browns should be favored in this game. But here's the thing, like, the Dolphins are busting at the seams. Like, they're falling apart. And we just had on Monday, the first head coach fired in the NFL in Bill Callahan down in Tennessee, right? Now that one's out of the way, like, other teams, I think, are going to sort of be ready and willing to follow suit if their seasons aren't going the right direction. And I think the next coach in line to get fired probably is Mike McDaniel, because that's been bad since week one. And that you can tell within the locker room, like, things are kind of falling apart. And when guys are sort of talking about each other publicly, you're losing control down there. I think that's very evident right now. If the Browns become the reason that the Dolphins don't fire Mike McDaniel, like, if they win this game on Sunday and they build some good juju for them kind of moving forward and he doesn't get fired, like, that's as bad as it gets. That I've thrown around the term rock bottom in relation to the offense and, how bad they've looked to this point in the season. And I think they were more of a rock bottom when it was Joe Flacco out there. But it would be like rock bottom of the season to this point if you lose to this Miami Dolphins team that is on the brink of completely just imploding on itself. That would be a disaster. I am not being flippant about this. Like they are on the brink of imploding. And if you lose to them, that says a lot about the state of the Browns right now. And I think that is where things could turn for the worse. And you'll see some of the same stuff going on in Miami going on up here if you lose to that Dolphins team. This is for the sake of job security for the people in charge, for the sake of the season spiraling out of control. This, in a lot of ways, is a must-win game for the Browns if they want to keep this ship sort of in any way moving in the right direction and sort of get the nose up on the plane, if you will. If you lose this game, it's going to say a lot about the state of this team right now and where they're at, because this Dolphins team is bad. And theoretically, the Browns should beat them because their defense is so good. But with the offense they have, there's no guarantee they can beat anybody. And that's the big question mark here. But I'm telling you, this game is going to be a pretty telling one for either of these teams. And it honestly could, like, if the Dolphins lose this game on Sunday, it might be the thing that gets Mike McDaniel fired. Like, that could be the last straw, especially if there's more comments made by players like Tua or others about, like, the state of things. Like, they are teetering on having to fire their coach. If the Browns lose to the Dolphins, I don't know if Kevin Stefanski gets fired Monday. I've continued to say, I think the one saving grace for Stefanski right now is that I think Jimmy Haslam would wait till the end of the season. I don't know that like doing something in mid-season is going to change much or like what that sort of accomplishes. I think he wait till the end of the season. I could be wrong about that. But so I don't know that it goes both. It's like a vice versa thing here. If the one team loses on Sunday or whichever team loses on Sunday, they're going to fire their coach the next week. I think that would probably be the case for the Dolphins. I don't know if it'd be the case for the Browns, but I do think a loss to the Dolphins on Sunday would start to really tilt this thing in a bad way against Kevin Stefanski and that tough decision that maybe looms at the end of the season if you're bringing either of these guys back or whatever you're going to do, at least with the head coaching position. It's an interesting matchup from that standpoint. I think we've learned a lot about this team already and how things are and the state of things. But I like you lose that game on Sunday, it's going to be as revelatory as it gets in terms of like how healthy things are in that locker room, despite the situation, despite how bad things have gone. It's going to be something. So must-win game for the Browns this weekend in terms of calming things down a little bit, job status, job security of certain guys, and trying to get things back on track. Losing to that Dolphins team would trigger, I think, a chain reaction, just disastrous scenario within the walls out there of the team facility in Berea. That's going to do it. Another episode down with you, Dog Pound. Thanks for joining me, as always, to talk about your favorite football team. If you liked what you heard, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make Locked On Browns your first listen every day, wherever you get your podcasts, and at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. My guy, Lance Reisland, makes his weekly appearance on the show for Tuesday's episode. We'll break down a few plays, talk about what's working, talk about what's not working, why it's hard to judge Dylan Gabriel, as I talked about for that game on Sunday. So a lot of good stuff coming there. You can also check out Locked On NFL, the Locked On NFL podcast, wherever you get your podcast twice a day, and at the Locked On NFL YouTube channel, or keep it local. Check out Locked On Cavs or Locked On Guardians. Thank you for being every day at the Locked On Podcast Network. I will talk to you again on Tuesday. See you, Cleveland.